A sharp slap rang out across the marble lobby of Liberty Trust Bank in Atlanta, cutting through the usual chatter and rustle of papers like a firecracker on the 4th of July. "I've already called 911. We don't take kindly to your kind around here," Paige Reynolds hollered, her voice echoing off the high ceilings as if she were the boss of everything in sight. Customers froze in their tracks, some with pens hovering over deposit slips, others looking up from their bifocals, heads turning quick to see what the ruckus was about. Zion Taylor stood steady as a rock, his cheek stinging sharp from the hit, his calm eyes fixed on Paige, the customer service manager, whose name tag gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights like a sheriff's star. Two burly security guards hustled over, surrounding Zion instead of stopping Paige, barking, "You're under arrest, mister." "Don't try anything." Folks pulled out their phones to record, capturing another rotten case of prejudice. Some shook their heads in disgust, others watched wide-eyed, but most just stood there, not eager to step into the mess. Zion didn't holler back or hightail it out the door like Paige might have hoped. No, he held his ground, steady as an oak, smoothing out his old jacket over a plain button-up shirt, the kind you'd pick up at Sears for a few bucks back in the day. "I reckon you folks have this all mixed up," he said, his voice deep and calm, rolling through the thick air like a slow-moving freight train. Nothing flashy, just solid enough to make you stop and listen, even with that sore red mark blooming across his cheek. It wasn't a shout or a tremble, but the kind of quiet strength that reminded you of a man who'd seen tough times and come out the other side. The lobby stayed hushed, folks holding their breath, waiting to see if he'd buckle under Paige's glare or if she'd keep pushing, her hard, mean look still trying to stare him down like she had the upper hand. Before we get too far into this story and what happens next, if you're tired of seeing unfair treatment at banks, or anywhere else for that matter, give that like button a good tap and hit subscribe to stick with us. Take a minute to jot down a comment below. Let us know where you're watching from, maybe your hometown or the easy chair in your den, and I'll make sure to send you a friendly reply to keep the conversation going strong. At 45, Zion Taylor was the definition of a self-made man. Someone who clawed his way up from scratch with nothing but grit and brains. The son of a hospital janitor who mopped floors all night and a public school teacher who graded papers past midnight, he juggled 3 part-time jobs to get through college, earned his MBA while raising his daughter Jada alone after his wife's sudden death, and transformed Taylor Financial Group from a dingy one-room startup into a sprawling $9 billion banking empire that shook the industry. His face had popped up on the glossy covers of Forbes and Black Enterprise, his name etched on donor plaques at hospitals, community centers, and Morehouse College down the road. He greenlit deals that rebuilt neighborhoods and lifted families. But none of that flash was anywhere to be seen as he stood in Liberty Trust that day. Zion traded his sharp, custom-tailored suits and bold silk ties for a basic jacket and slacks you'd find on a clearance rack at Macy's, his neatly cropped hair tucked under a no-name cap, his trademark glasses swapped for plain contacts that dulled his usual spark. He blended in like any ordinary black guy trying to handle some banking in Atlanta, and that was exactly what he wanted them to think. 3 weeks earlier, he'd pulled off a hush-hush buyout of Liberty Trust Bank, a move so quiet most employees didn't have a clue, with the big reveal slated for next month, once he'd finished scoping out how the place really ticked behind its polished front. This wasn't just another bank on Zion's radar. This specific Liberty Trust branch carried a weight that cut deep into his roots. 30 years back, his grandfather Elijah Jenkins had walked through these same heavy glass doors, hat in hand, asking for a modest home loan to get his family a foothold. He had a spotless credit score, a solid paycheck, but they brushed him off with vague nonsense about neighborhood guidelines, leaving him trapped in a cycle of renting that drained every dime he could have saved for his kids. "You can't catch everything in spreadsheets," Zion had told his team when he laid out his undercover idea. "Discrimination doesn't show up in the fine print. I've got to step into it myself to know what's real." His executive crew balked at the plan, throwing up all kinds of red flags. Too reckless, too out there, way too much risk. What if someone recognized him from a magazine cover? Couldn't they just hire some undercover shoppers or consultants instead? But Zion shut that down quick. "You don't change what you don't understand from the ground floor up," he said, his voice carrying that same unshakable drive that had turned his little firm into a giant. He needed to walk in their shoes, feel the sting of it firsthand, not just read about it in some report. Away from the high-stakes meetings and corner offices, Zion's whole world spun around Jada, his 16-year-old daughter. She was the fire behind everything he did, the future he was hell-bent on securing for her and every family the system had kicked down. Their modern Atlanta condo, with its floor-to-ceiling windows and walls decked with framed awards, shouted his wins, but also kept him grounded in why those wins counted. The night before his third trip to Liberty Trust, the one that'd end with that slap, Jada had leaned across their kitchen island, city lights twinkling outside, and hit him with, "Dad, you own the damn place now. Why not fire everybody and call it a day? Why mess around with this sneaky stuff?" Zion took a slow bite of his food, mulling over her question like he always did when she came at him with that quick, teenage mind. "Firing people without figuring out what's busted doesn't solve a thing," he said finally. "They'd just land somewhere else pulling the same garbage and the whole messed-up system keeps rolling right along." Jada wasn't letting it go. "So you're fine with them treating you like dirt after all you've done?" He gave her that warm, steady look he'd perfected. "Sometimes the strongest move is letting them think you're nothing. Your great-granddad taught me that lesson. He couldn't crack it from the outside, but I've got the shot to fix it from the inside." Jada couldn't totally get it how her dad balanced being a top-dog banking exec and a black man navigating America's minefields every day. Liberty Trust wasn't just a line item in his portfolio, it was a chance to square up with a system that had stomped on Elijah's dreams without a second thought. Kicked off in 1952, the bank had ballooned through the decades by funneling cash to white clients while tossing out flimsy excuses to dodge black folks with just as good or better credentials. A history Zion was dead set on ripping open and rewriting. Ever walked into a place and got judged hard just for how you look or sound? Hit us with your story in the comments below. When did it happen? How'd it feel? Your experience might strike a chord with way more people than you'd guess. Zion pulled up to Liberty Trust on a Tuesday morning, timing it just right. Not too busy, but enough folks around to see how the staff played their cards. The bank sat smack in Atlanta's financial district, a sturdy brick building with tall marble columns and shiny brass accents that screamed old money and power. He kept it simple: navy slacks, a plain gray jacket, and a scuffed leather bag stuffed with a fake ID under Zion Jenkins, his granddad Elijah's last name, painting him as a middle-of-the-road consultant with a decent paycheck, nothing to make you look twice. Standing in the short line, Zion kept his eyes peeled. A white businessman in a pinstriped suit got ushered straight to a private desk with a handshake. An older white couple got walked through their retirement options like royalty. He stepped up to Addison, a 24-year-old teller with a starched shirt and a twitchy rookie energy, flashing a quick, easy smile. "Hey, I just moved to town," he said, sliding his ID over. "Need a checking account, maybe some investment options down the line? Whatever you've got." Addison barely glanced at the ID before pushing a flimsy brochure across the counter, mumbling, "You can set it all up online or hit the ATM out front. Quicker that way, you know." No offer for a sit-down like the others got, just a brush-off. "I'd rather talk it out with someone," Zion said, keeping his tone friendly but firm, not letting it slide. Addison's eyes darted over to Paige Reynolds, who was watching from her desk like a hawk. Then he grabbed the phone. "Walk-in wants a banker." "Yeah, got it." He gave a half shrug. "They're all busy right now. Online's real easy. Give it a shot." Just then, Paige popped up to greet a white woman in a blazer not much fancier than Zion's, her voice booming across the lobby. "Hey, welcome to Liberty Trust. Let me take care of you myself. We're all about that personal touch here." The gap was glaring, one shoved toward a screen, the other treated like a VIP, and the only difference was the color of their skin. Zion filed it away in his head, staying cool, and tossed out, "I'm good with setting up an appointment if that's easier for y'all." Paige sauntered over, sizing Zion up with a look that said he wasn't worth her time, her heels clicking sharp on the marble. "New folks usually kick things off online," she said, her smile tight and fake as hell. "We're swamped with our regular customers right now." Zion didn't blink. "I'm more of a face-to-face guy. I'll wait if I need to. We've got strict policies. Gonna need extra ID, proof of where you live." She threw out a hurdle she didn't make anybody else clear. Zion dug into his bag and handed over his driver's license, social security card, and a fresh electric bill, more than enough to open an account anywhere legit. Paige snatched them up, peering at each one like she was a cop sniffing out a counterfeit, then hit him with, "Self-pornoble, huh? We're gonna need your tax returns, business license, all that jazz." None of that was listed on their website or flyers, just extra steps piled on him. "There's a credit union a few blocks over," she added with a smirk, basically telling him to get lost. Wednesday morning, Zion rolled back in, armed to the teeth with a thick folder, tax returns, bank statements, every scrap of paper he could think of, to kill any excuse they might cook up. The lobby was livelier now, folks milling around, chatting, waiting in line. Addison clocked him from his teller spot and stiffened like he'd seen a ghost. Paige was over by the coffee station, laughing it up with a white guy in khakis and a polo. Zion marched straight to the info desk, voice clear, looking for checking, savings, and some wealth management talk. "I've got an appointment lined up." The receptionist blinked hard, fumbling with her computer. No record of him anywhere, but Zion kept it smooth. "Spoke to someone yesterday. They told me to swing by with all my stuff today," he said, tapping his overstuffed folder like it was no big deal. She picked up the phone, unsure. Bailey Walsh, the branch manager, leaned out of his office door, the type who kept his hands clean by letting others do the dirty work. Paige swooped in fast. "Mr. Walsh, this is that same guy from yesterday. We laid out the rules already." Bailey's face went all business, sizing Zion up. "All right, let's see what you brought," he said, crossing his arms. Zion spread out his stash. Passport, utility bills, tax forms, bank statements. Stuff so airtight you couldn't poke a hole in it with a lawyer. They had no choice but to budge, sending him over to Victor, a 61-year-old loan officer with gray hair and 40 years of doing this job like a machine. Victor started rattling off the basics, but when Zion brought up wealth management, he waved it off. "That's a $250,000 minimum to even sit down. Better off with a regular savings account for now. My portfolio's sitting over $500,000, tech stocks, some bonds," Zion said, calm and slick as ever. "I'm here to talk diversification." Victor's eyes widened for a split second before he locked it down, muttering, "We'd have to verify all that. Takes a while, lots of paperwork." Right next door, a white couple was laughing with another banker about investments. No stacks of proof in sight. "They don't need to verify?" Zion asked, nodding their way. Victor shifted in his seat, dodging. "Every situation's its own thing. Different rules apply." Zion kept at it, asking why he needed more job proof when his taxes spelled it all out, and Paige stormed over, cutting in. "Our policies make sure we're dealing with the right kind of clients," she snapped, her tone dripping with attitude. "If that's too much for you, there's other places to go." A few heads turned, some curious, some pretending not to hear. "So which policies hit everybody and which ones just land on me?" Zion asked, his voice carrying just enough to make her squirm. Paige flipped on a dime, beaming at a white guy walking in, proving the game in real time. She swung back around, colder than before. "We'll process all this, get back to you in 7 business days," she said, like it was final. Zion tilted his head toward a white dude strolling out with fresh checks in hand. "How's he walking out set up? And I'm waiting a week." Paige's face tightened, her words clipped. "Every case is its own deal. We've done what we can today," she spat, then peeled off, leaving Victor to stumble through an awkward wrap-up. Zion headed out, jotting down every slick move they'd pulled. Thursday rolled around and Zion came in sharper, still understated but with crisp slacks, a pressed shirt, and a leather portfolio that meant business, ready to dig into loan options. The lobby staff knew his face now. Addison ducked behind his counter, Victor got real busy with some papers, and Paige stopped mid-sentence with a coworker when she spotted him. He strode up to the info desk with purpose. "Morning, I'm here to talk business loans, looking to grow my consulting outfit," he said, setting the tone firm and clear. After 23 minutes of sitting around twirling a pen and watching the clock, Victor finally slid him a stack of generic flyers. "All our specialists are tied up today," he muttered, barely looking up. Then Paige lit up like a Christmas tree for a white guy in a polo who'd just walked in. "Mr. Davis, hear about that expansion loan? Bailey's got time for you right now." Zion leaned forward, voice steady. "Funny, looks like some specialists are free after all." Victor bolted. Paige and her buddies grumbled under their breath. "Damn day, over it, always fishing for special treatment." Zion stepped right up to Paige's desk, cutting through the whispers. "I caught that. What policy says you treat folks different based on race?" The lobby went pin-drop silent, every ear perked. Paige's face flushed hot, her eyes blazing. "You didn't hear a damn thing. Get out now," she hissed. "I'm just pointing out what's going on," he said, feet planted like roots. She lurched forward, crowding him. "Leave, or security's hauling you out." "Call them," he fired back, unflinching. She snapped, rearing back and landing a hard slap across his face, shouting, "You don't belong here, period." Sirens wailed, loud, as cop cars screeched up outside, red and blue lights flashing wild against the marble columns. Paige grinned, smug as hell. "They're here. Good luck." Two white officers barged in, with an Asian American woman trailing, the lead guy zeroing in on Zion like he was the problem. Paige jumped in quick. "He got loud, started threatening us. Had to get him out." Zion didn't budge. Cool as ever. "She slapped me after I asked about their bias. Check the security cams. Half the rooms got it on their phones." A woman nearby chimed in. "She hit him first. I've got the whole thing recorded right here." More voices piled on, tearing Paige's lie to shreds, customers nodding, pointing at their screens. Bailey piped up from his office. "We can pull the footage, no problem," flipping sides to save his own skin. Zion grabbed his phone, calm and deliberate. "One quick call." On speaker. He dialed up. "Desiree, round up the team and get here." Paige flinched at Taylor instead of Jenkins, her gears grinding. Desiree swept in with a crew in sharp suits, handing Zion a sleek Taylor Financial folder. "I'm Zion Taylor, CEO of Taylor Financial Group. I own Liberty Trust," he said, slapping the acquisition docs into Paige's shaky hands. Paige's face drained to ash, her voice cracking. "I'm so sorry, sir. I had no idea who you were." Bailey groveled next, sweat beading. "We'd have given you the full VIP rundown if we'd known," Zion cut through the bullshit. "No, this is how you treat people you figure don't count, day in, day out, to anybody who looks like me." Desiree started passing out termination notices like candy. The lead cop stepped up. "You pressing charges for the hit?" Zion shook his head slow. Nah, but she's out of here. This ain't about one person, it's the whole damn culture." Paige staggered out, clutching a cardboard box of her stuff, tie dangling loose, tears streaking her face as a wave of applause broke out, not cheering her fall, but the system finally getting called out. Customers crowded Zion, swapping their own tales of getting screwed over at this branch, years of frustration spilling out. Victor slipped away next, head down, his little box barely full after decades, then Bailey ranting loud, 26 years down the drain." Zion turned to the leftover staff, voice steady. "This isn't about settling scores. It's about tearing down what's rotten and building it back right. New rules kick in today." News vans screeched in as the videos hit the internet like wildfire, phones buzzing with shares and retweets. Zion's team kept it raw and open, no backroom deals or quiet payoffs. By sundown, they'd slotted in temp leaders, filed reports for the regulators, turning a total train wreck into a textbook takedown. Later, Zion stood alone by the big glass doors where Elijah had been turned away decades ago, the weight of history pressing down, and the spark of what's next lighting him up. 6 months later, Zion stood in that same lobby, watching Liberty Trusts run like a different beast. Open desks swapped for the old barriers, a staff that actually looked like Atlanta, signs touting community projects instead of just rich guy perks. They'd cracked open the books, aired every dirty trick, and rewrote the playbook. Accounts spiked 34%. Especially from black and brown folks who'd been ignored forever. An old black man in a faded jacket got real investment tips. A young Latino guy pitched his startup without jumping through hoops. Zion cracked a rare smile, seeing the change he'd fought tooth and nail for take root. If this story hit you right, smash that subscribe button and pass it along to your crew. Drop us a line, tell us what you think, what you'd change. We'll catch you in the next one. Stay tuned.